Good evening, YouTube. Here's another JavaScript tutorial from Double Dog for Life. Today I'll be covering variables, and well, let's get started. So you can see their variables can be declared using three different types of keywords: var, let, or const, and they each have different context and meaning pertaining to scope or whether a variable can be modified. And variables can hold various data types. So the first variable using var, we'll go over var first. I have a variable named num, and this is what's called declaring the variable, or it's a variable declaration. It has no value. And then redeclaring the variable num with a value. So this is what's known as, it's also a variable declaration, but it's also an initialization. It's been initialized with a value of 5. So what we have here is essentially a statement. Var is the keyword to declare this variable. Num is the name of the variable, and 5 is the value, using the assignment operator to store this value in this variable name or in memory. And there are various different ways. If you're declaring multiple variables, you can do it this way right here. Just use the one keyword, and then either declare your variables without values, or declare them with values like I have here, so they're initialized. Without values would be like that. And you separate them by commas so that you can put multiple variables on one line. It's easier to read. Or you can simply do this and just keep using the var keyword. You need to terminate your variables or statements with a semicolon, so the JavaScript compiler knows when to stop reading it. As you've seen before, the way I had it, you can put multiples on the line, but you have to separate with a comma. And the end one still needs to be terminated with a semicolon, so JavaScript knows when to stop reading it. Alright, let's go over a few data types. The first data type I'm using, or I'm showing you here, is a string, and it's a variable with the name, and it's containing the value of header. And if we print that to the console, you'll see that it contains the value of header. I'll save. Console here. Run, and you see it contains header. And the way you get to this console in Google and various other, maybe set up a little bit different in various other browsers like IE, but it's pretty much the same. You come here and you look for in Google, look for more tools, and then development tools will bring you to this. I think it's dev tools in IE. Alright, so going down, the next data type I'm storing in a variable is what's known as an array. It's a complex data type, and what it is essentially what it does is it holds many values or elements that can be printed or indexed. And we'll console.log one to show you how that works. Use brackets at 0 index, so 100 starts at 0, 200 starts at 1, and 300 starts at 2. So if we wanted to pull out the first element and print it to screen, we would put the name of the array, or the name of the variable, which is my array. In my case, it can be named whatever you want. I'm just trying to make it easier to understand. And 0, and it will print 100 to the screen. File, save. Refresh the page. Oops, I didn't console.log it. Console.log. When you're printing to the console, you have to use console.log, which is a built-in method. And you see it prints 100 over here to the screen. So if we wanted to get 1, refresh it, and it prints to the screen. So this is just a quick overview of some of the data types. I'm not going to go into them. I'm going to go into more into arrays later and objects and all that. Specifically, will be tutorials for those different data types. But I will cover one method of arrays. It's called the push method, and it's a method of the main object in JavaScript. The main object is object, and all methods and everything else in JavaScript is built into this object. So here I have my array, and I'm using the push method to push in 400. It's gonna, what this method does is it pushes another element in. It would push it in right here at the end of the array. And we'll take it back out. So this pushes in there, so we can index it as well. We'll print that to the screen right here. And so there's 0 index, so 0, 1, 2, it'll be at 3. And you see it prints 400. So it is at index 3, and it does exist within the array now. It's been pushed into it. Continue down. The next type of data type I have is an object called creature object. It's also a complex data type. Almost everything in JavaScript is an object. Even functions are objects. And right here, there's 3 different ways you can create objects, but right here I'm doing it by key value pairs. And the name of your property, and then the value you want to store in there. So it's separated by right here. You got to use I don't remember what they're called, but it's not a semicolon. It's a colon, I believe. Colon, and then you know, if you're passing a string, it's got to be in parentheses, and then you got to separate each value pair by commas, except for the last one. So you notice I also have a method in here. There's no comma after here because there's no other property. If I threw a comma there, it would throw an error and the object wouldn't work. Again, even if I terminated right here, like I'm terminating a statement with a semicolon, it would throw an error and it wouldn't work. So I'll take that back out. So again, you have your property and your value. It's called key value pairs. And then, like I said before, I have a method right here, alien info, and it's returning a function. And this function is returning a string, concatenation, and then it's returning various properties of the object. So I'm calling this object again, and then calling the type, the property of that object. This is what's known as dot notation. And then I'm using concatenation of the string, and then I'm calling the creature object again, and then the property life source, and then another concatenation and another string to end it. So when we console.log this to screen, which right here I'm calling the method that's in there with dot notation, and I'm using the name of the object is creature object dot alien info is my function, which any function placed into an object becomes a method of that object. And then to call it or invoke it, you have to pass in the I'm having a brain fart, but you got to pass in these right here. They're not parentheses, or maybe they are parentheses to call it. If I call it without that, we'll try that right now. Console.log it, and you'll see it will return the whole function definition or the method definition rather than running this code right here. So I'll refresh the screen, and you see right here it says it got an F for function, and it's returning the whole function declaration or definition rather than what we want. So we'll go back in here and put the parentheses back in. File, save, recall it, refresh, and there you have it. Alien has 4 hearts. So you see I have a property type. The string alien is its value. A life source. The life source has 4 hearts. And down in here, in the method, I'm grabbing that type, which is alien, and I'm grabbing the life source, which is 4 hearts, to print out this sentence that we just read on the screen. Alright, pushing forward. Alright, let's go over declaring variables with the other 2 types of keywords, let and then we'll get to const. Let is has a special context within the code block. It has block scope, meaning when you use the word let within a block right here, I have a block. You can see them right here between these two brackets. These two brackets will make up a block. So anything in this block is block code. And we'll run it first right now. Take these out. We're going to run this variable modify here, which should print a global variable, which it will, and we're console.log in it here. Before this block, we're using the same variable name within block scope, but we're also using the word var, so it will modify this variable right here, and it will change it to this sentence here when we run it, and then we'll call it again down here so you can see it's changed. We're calling this variable here again down here in the global scope outside the block, so you can see it's changed. Because the way the code reads is from top to bottom, so this will print just fine, a global variable. It's not been modified yet. Then it gets down to parse this block here, and it reads the same variable here. And then what it does essentially is it will take this sentence here, or this value here, and replace it in the global scope here. So it will overwrite this sentence here, a global variable, with a block scope variable. So you see that when we console.log the global variable again right here, modified. So file, save, refresh. And there you have it. The first variable name modified prints just fine, a global variable. The values hasn't changed. And then we'll get to the block scope, and it prints that, a block scope variable, which seems like it's working fine so far. We console.log it within the block itself. And then when we console.log it again right here in the global scope, we see that the global variable has been modified or replaced with this value, a block scope variable. So it prints twice. So I'll show you how the word let, the keyword let for variables works, and that it does have block scope. So when we change this var with let, save, what will happen now is this variable here will maintain its current value in the global scope, even when we call it again down here, and this will print its value just fine. So this, with the keyword let, this variable here with the same name does not modify this variable here in the global scope. So refresh it, and you see a global variable printed fine, hasn't been modified yet. We ran down to the block code, and it prints a block scope variable just fine. And then when we call the same variable, the same name again in the global scope, it maintains its previous value, a global variable. So you see the variable with the same name in block scope does not affect the variable in global scope when you're using the word let within a block of code. So that's how block scope works using the word let. And we're going down to using the keyword const now. And what const does is it makes a variable constant. So that variable, if another variable within the global scope has the same name, it can't modify that first constant variable as it reads down. It will throw an error in the system telling you that it's already been declared. The variable's already been declared. It's a good way to keep code from modifying various features within your code, or whether you have programs that might have a same variable name as some other variable with a string. And so right now we're not using the word const. We have one variable called or named string, and it contains this value. Will contain the string below, and then we have another variable named string, and what it's containing is a function, and it's just returning this long sentence I wrote. And we'll console.log it. So you have two variables right now, and we'll see what happens with that. And then you get the function, because what has happened is the code read. It read down here, and then it read this variable with the same name and this function. So this function got placed as a value, this string in the global scope. So it overwrote this value, or this string right here. And the reason why it didn't return back this sentence is because we didn't call it. We console logged it as a normal variable, but it's actually a function, so it needs these parentheses right here to run as a function. Otherwise, any function you run without these will return the function definition, unless it's a callback function being called from within another function. And I'm not going to get into that right now. That will be in a function tutorial. But just know that when you call a function without the parentheses, it'll generally return the function definition, which is what we're seeing right here, which is the whole function itself. Okay, what did I just do? Oh, somehow I skipped out of the log. It'll return the function and all the code within the function, return statement, pretty much all the code, it's known as the function definition or function declaration. And this is what's known when you store a function in a variable, it becomes a function. It's what's known as a function expression, because the equal sign is what makes it an expression. It's the equal operator. So since it overwrite it, we'll show you how it modifies. We're going to run the function now by attaching the parentheses to it, and it will return the string. Refresh it instead of returning the function declaration, and it says just corrupted the code, returns the function declaration when called as a normal variable. Now it references this function named the program, runs the function when invoked with the variable name, which I just explained, plus the parentheses. We just invoked this function. So you can see with the var, how, and with the same variable name, how in code and global scope you can overwrite variables very easily. So the way to block against that would be to declare it with a constant variable, or a const. And so we redeclare the string, file save, and that will throw an error telling me that when it gets to this code to read it, they'll throw an error telling me that this variable right here has already been declared. So we refresh it right here on constant text error. Identifier string has already been declared. So it doesn't let me modify. This variable here containing this string with this function. So that's a very good thing. So that's how the keyword constant for variables works in JavaScript. And one other way, let me just comment this out. One other way you can overwrite variables in the global scope too is easy too, is like not even using a keyword, just saying a string equals, well, let's just give it a number, 1000. And then let's take off this because we're not invoking the function anymore. Just passing the string to the console, or passing the variable string to the console to print. And then when it prints to the screen, you can see that it prints right here 1000. So this string here, this string variable here, or this variable named string, with this containing a value as a string, has now been replaced with a value that is a number data type. So this has overwritten this variable here. And you see it right here, the way it prints the screen. Alright, well, that about wraps it up for this tutorial. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, please send me a message and I'll try to explain it. Or if I said anything wrong and needs to be corrected, let me know. I don't mind constructive criticism. And if you like my videos, please subscribe below. Thank you.